has feminism changed your life?
How has feminism changed?
Like, how has what you studied changed you think?
Yeah. In profound ways. I feel like I'm constantly struggling with how to be in the world, right? I think, again, like you, I think we're trying to find ways to be outside these stereotypes, and yet constantly fall into them, you know, because they're
falling in and out of them
falling
all
in and
the
out of
time.
them.
Yeah,
right. And one thing, you know, I have chosen not to have children, which immediately has you're not seen as a real woman. If you know, what's wrong with you? You're not really caring. You don't want to have children. It's amazing how that still persists. You know, there are a number of ways that, you know, I'm not for marriage in any form unless one needs it to get documents or to get health care or things like that, because I think it's a structure that reproduces forms of discrimination and inequality. It was initially a relationship, as you said, about property, right? It's the husband, and you know, who owns the wife. In some sense, she's a form of property for him. And anybody who's gotten divorced realizes it is about property ultimately. And this goes, you know, for gay marriage as well. So these are the ways in which I'm constantly trying to kind of go against these things, but yet I get gendered, and I gender myself in ways that are also seen as feminine, right? So it's a constant struggle.
Right, that you make these really non-traditional, in some respects very radical, right, in the history of women, choices that women even didn't get to make, right? The ability to decide that you're not going to have children is a decision that many women around the world, hundreds of millions, don't get to choose.
Right.
It's not a choice that they get to have.
Precisely, and it's a very positioned choice. When I think of my mother, when I was growing up, my mother grew up in India. I was born in India, and she was actually an orphan and and from a very difficult childhood. It's a long kind of story, but when she got to Canada and she married my father, who was actually from South Africa and fleeing his own, you know, their own struggles there, she chose to stay at home and be a housewife, and that was an empowering choice. And she used to say to me, "I hate feminists," because she felt oppressed by it. They're telling her, "You're staying at home, you're oppressed," you know. But it's all these intersections of race and gender and class. You know, she was like many women of color. She didn't, you know. For her, it was a really empowering thing to get to stay at home and not have to go out and work. So again, my choice is it's very located, of course, in my own forms of privilege. Right? That I can work. I've chosen to work to make my career something that's important to me. But that's a very privileged way of living as well. You know?
So for me, the biggest addition to feminism to my life, I think, would be around gender, right, and around gender roles, and the ability to be able to, as I describe it, I come in and out of different genders all the time, which without feminism really wouldn't have been possible, and without that essential challenge and butting up against the idea that there were certain ways that we had to be, that we would still have to make these very limiting choices, which just pick any film from the 1950s, right? In so many ways, people found that system really oppressive in a variety of different ways. I mean, Jimmy Dean, like all his movies are about, right? That weight of this thing that we have to be, and The Rebel Without a Cause was sort of the teenage male companion to the thing that couldn't be named by Betty Friedan.
Right,
this weight that was just bearing down on people. And without that having been rolled out of the way, there's no way that I would be able to be fully who I am. So
and so I think, absolutely. And I think you bring up a hugely important point, which is that it's about masculinities and femininities. Again, it's about all kinds of bodies. And feminism is not just about kind of feminine gendered bodies. It's just not. It can't be. It's about a social justice for all of us. I mean, the forms of masculinity that are imposed on boys are incredibly oppressive, right? So feminism should, as you're saying, you can choose now to come in and out and embrace the parts of masculinity that you want and the parts of femininity that you want. But I think that the counterpart to that particular Betty Friedan femininity and masculinity is oppressive to both kinds of men and women.